The fluorescent lights of Murphy's Diner cast harsh shadows across Maya Johnson's face as she untied her grease-stained apron for the last time that night. Her fingers moved with practiced efficiency, muscle memory from countless shifts that blurred together in a haze of coffee refills and forced smiles. The clock above the register read 11:47 p.m. Another 14-hour day that would barely cover her textbooks for next semester. Maya stepped into the cool October air, her worn sneakers silent against the pristine sidewalks of the Whitmore University district. The contrast hit her like a physical blow. The gleaming storefronts, the manicured trees lining streets she could never afford to live on, the casual wealth that seemed to emanate from every brick and mortar. Her black work uniform, wrinkled and carrying the scent of fryer oil, marked her as an outsider in this world of privilege. Groups of students spilled out of trendy bars and coffee shops, their laughter echoing off glass facades. Designer handbags swung carelessly from shoulders, worth more than Maya's rent. She kept her eyes forward, but peripheral vision caught the subtle shifts. Conversations that paused as she passed, eyes that tracked her movement with barely concealed disdain. "Look at that!" A voice drifted from a cluster of sorority girls outside Café Luna. "Some people really don't know their place, do they?" The words weren't meant for her ears, but they found their mark anyway. Maya's jaw tightened imperceptibly, her grandmother's voice echoing in her memory. "Hold your head high, baby girl. Their ignorance says nothing about you and everything about them." She turned onto Elm Street, where the boutique lighting gave way to standard street lamps and the sidewalk cracked beneath her feet. The bus stop waited 6 blocks ahead. 6 blocks that might as well have been 6 miles after the day she'd endured. Her lower back ached from hours of carrying heavy trays. Her feet throbbed in shoes held together with determination and duct tape. Behind her, footsteps echoed against the pavement. Maya's shoulders tensed automatically, a response honed by years of navigating spaces where her presence was questioned, where her very existence seemed to offend. She quickened her pace slightly, telling herself it was nothing. Just another student heading home, just her imagination running wild after too many late nights in a neighborhood that had never welcomed her. The footsteps matched her rhythm, growing closer with each block. The heavy oak doors of the Chancellor's Club swung open, releasing a cloud of expensive cologne and entitlement into the night air. Brad Whitfield stumbled onto the sidewalk first, his Polo Ralph Lauren shirt wrinkled from an evening of celebration. Behind him, Connor Hayes and Tyler Morrison followed, their trust fund confidence amplified by top-shelf whiskey and the intoxicating knowledge that consequences were things that happened to other people. "Dude, my dad's gonna flip when he sees the Amex bill," Connor laughed, running a hand through his perfectly styled hair. The sound carried the casual arrogance of someone who had never worried about money, never counted coins for bus fare, never worked a day that left grease under his fingernails. Brad's bloodshot eyes scanned the street with predatory focus. At 21, he had already mastered the art of viewing the world as his personal playground, a skill passed down through generations of Whitfield men who had built their fortune on the backs of others and called it the American dream. His gaze landed on Maya's retreating figure, and something dark flickered across his features. Well, he drawled, his voice thick with alcohol and malice. "Look what we have here." Tyler squinted into the distance, his vision blurred by bourbon. "What are you looking at, man? Some ghetto trash thinking she can walk through our neighborhood." Brad's words dripped with venom, each syllable a weapon forged in country clubs and private schools where diversity meant having one scholarship kid to point to during admissions interviews. The three had grown up in a bubble of privilege so complete that empathy had never been required, never been taught, never been modeled. Their fathers were senators and CEOs. Their mothers chaired charity galas while employing undocumented workers at below minimum wage. They had learned early that the world was divided into 2 categories: people like them and people who existed to serve people like them. "She's probably stealing something," Connor added, his prep school education apparently failing to include basic human decency. "Should we call campus security?" Brad's smile turned predatory. "Nah. Let's have some fun first." They began walking faster, their expensive loafers clicking against the pavement in a rhythm that spoke of pursuit. Maya was still half a block ahead, but the distance was closing. Her work uniform made her an easy target in their alcohol-addled minds, a symbol of everything they believed themselves superior to. "Hey!" Brad called out, his voice echoing off the buildings. "Were you going so fast?" Maya's heart hammered against her ribs. She had felt this before, the weight of being hunted, the sick realization that her skin color made her prey in spaces where she had every right to exist. Her grandmother's boxing lessons whispered in her muscle memory, but 22 years of conditioning told her to run, to hide, to make herself smaller. The bus stop seemed impossibly far away. The alley was narrow, walls pressed in like silent witnesses, slick with old rain and graffiti that faded into shadow. Maya's footsteps echoed too loud against the concrete, too alone. She quickened her pace. That's when she heard them. "You lost, princess?" Brad's voice slithered from behind. She turned. 3 silhouettes emerged under the flickering street lamp. Brad, Connor, Tyler. Their smiles weren't friendly. They reeked of cheap whiskey and entitlement. Brad reached her first, grabbing her arm roughly. "Didn't think you belonged here, but look at you, strutting like you own the place." Connor moved to block her path, arms folded, grin sharp. "Relax. We're just talking, right?" Maya's heart pounded, but her voice came steady. "Let me go. I don't want any trouble." "Trouble?" Tyler snorted. "Nah, you people always act like victims. Play the race card when things don't go your way." She tried to twist free, but Brad tightened his grip. "What's it like? Getting handouts, quotas, scholarships just for checking a box?" Her body tensed. "I earned everything I have." "You?" Brad leaned in, his breath sour. "You think you're better than us? You think you belong?" A siren wailed faintly in the distance. For a moment, Maya thought they might back off. Instead, Tyler shoved her. She stumbled hard into the brick wall. Pain bloomed along her shoulder. Connor laughed. "She thinks we won't hit a girl." "She thinks we won't hit her," Brad corrected, his tone laced with venom. "Little Miss Diversity." Maya pushed herself up, trembling. Not from weakness, but from restraint. Every part of her screamed to fight. She trained for years jiu-jitsu, boxing. She could take them, but something deeper held her back. Don't give them an excuse. Don't become the angry black girl. Don't be what they expect. "Move," she said, low and cold. Brad's face twisted. "Wrong answer." His hands locked around her throat. Cold. Callous. She gasped, nails clawing his wrists. The world narrowed to the crushing pressure, the gleeful cackles of his friends, the glow of a phone recording it all. For a moment, it felt like dying wasn't the worst part. It was being reduced to an image, a hashtag, a footnote in someone else's narrative. Then something snapped. Not in her. In him. His eyes flickered. A shadow moved at the alley's mouth. "Hey!" A voice roared, deep, commanding. Brad dropped her. Maya collapsed, coughing hard, vision blurry. The silhouette of a man emerged, older, broad-shouldered, fury in his stride. "What the hell do you think you're doing?" he shouted. Brad, Connor, and Tyler froze. Tyler bolted first, then Connor. Brad lingered, just long enough to spit at Maya's feet. "Should have known you'd bring backup." He ran. Maya's rescuer knelt beside her, gentle hands lifting her upright. "You okay?" he asked. His face, lined with grief and recognition, wasn't unfamiliar. "I've got you now," he said. She stared at him, trying to place him through the fog. "Who are you?" she whispered. He hesitated. "Your father knew me." The weight of those words settled before the sirens returned. Louder, closer. And Maya, still shaking, finally let herself cry. Maya's lungs burned, vision darkening. The man's hands, Brad's, pressed tighter around her throat, but something inside her shifted. A tremor of memory. Not fear. Not submission. Fire. She'd felt it once before, years ago, standing in the middle of a dimly lit community gym with sweat soaking her braids, fists trembling not from exhaustion, but from something deeper. Rage. Control. Power. "You don't have to hit first," her grandmother had said back then. watching her from the side of the ring. But when you do, baby, make sure they never forget it. The sound of her own coughing snapped her back. Present. Now. Brick wall at her back. Brad's laughter in her ear. His grip tightening. Connor filming. Tyler smirking. Enough. Her eyes still watery. Locked on Brad's. The fear left her. It was gone. Click. The next moment moved like liquid. Maya's elbow drove up sharply into Brad's jaw. Bone cracked. His grip loosened. Her left foot pivoted, hips rotating. A textbook uppercut exploded from her core. Brad's body lifted off the ground before he collapsed in a heap. Phone skittered across the pavement. Connor yelled something. A curse? Maybe, and lunged. She saw his shoulders rise before he moved. Wrong move. Maya stepped into it. Crossed to the cheek. The pop echoed. He dropped like he'd been unplugged. Tyler froze mid-step, eyes darting between his friends and Maya. You crazy, he muttered. She advanced slowly, her posture low, controlled. Like the ring, like the finals. You wanted real, she said, voice like steel. This is real. He turned to run. Bad angle. Maya cut across with clean footwork, trapping him against the alley wall. Don't, he whimpered, hands raised. You touched me, she said. Now you face me. Her fist chambered but stopped an inch from his face. He flinched. Tears welled. She lowered her hand. You're not worth it. Tyler collapsed to his knees, sobbing and stammering apologies. The power shift was absolute. Sirens wailed nearby, closing in fast. Footsteps. Flashing lights painted the alley blue and red. Maya stood alone in the chaos, sweat gleaming on her brow. Her chest rose and fell, slow, rhythmic. Her fists opened, relaxed. Her body was calm, but inside, something was alive. Awake. She heard a voice call her name. The man from before, her father's old friend, was there again, standing back, watching. You fought, he said quietly. Like he used to. Her eyes snapped to him. You knew my father? He nodded. He trained with me. He taught me to see people for who they are, not what they pretend to be. Paramedics passed them, checking the boys sprawled across the alley. He never talked about fighting, she whispered, because he never wanted you to have to. The silence between them stretched. Then the officer stepped forward, white, young, stiff in posture. Gun still drawn. What happened here? Maya lifted her chin. They jumped me. I defended myself. The officer glanced at the unconscious boys, then at her, assessing, doubting. You expect me to believe that? Another officer, black, older, stepped in. He'd heard enough. We've got the footage. Connor's phone, retrieved and playing back every second. The first officer hesitated, frustration flickering. Maya didn't flinch. Go ahead. Try to twist it. The black officer gave her a small nod. Respect. The kind earned, not given. Her father's friend leaned close. You have more of him in you than you know. She turned to him. What was his name? In the ring? He smiled. Champion. The word echoed in her bones. But before she could ask more, one of the medics called out. Hey, this one's not waking up. Everyone turned to Brad's limp body. Maya's breath caught, and the silence that followed was absolute. Sirens still screamed in the distance, but the real noise was human. Shouts, gasps, the click of phone cameras slicing the night into fragments. Maya stood in the center of it all, her breath sharp, raw, her fists trembling at her sides, bloodied from impact. 3 bodies sprawled on the pavement, groaning, broken, defeated. From the edge of the gathering crowd, a woman stepped forward. Mid-30s, sharp eyes behind square glasses, cardigan slipping off one shoulder. Dr. Sarah Chen didn't hesitate. She called 911 with practiced urgency, voice calm but clipped. Her gaze never left Maya. They tried to kill her, she said to no one in particular. This wasn't a fight. It was a lynching in slow motion. Maya's knees buckled slightly, but she didn't fall. She locked her eyes on the woman. Who are you? Professor Chun, she replied. Literature. Whitmore. I saw what happened. Maya scanned the onlookers, some recording, some frozen. One teenager live-streamed with shaking hands. A man whispered to another, "That's Brad Connor's kid, isn't it? Football captain. Serves them right." Someone else muttered. "They've been harassing people for months." The words hit Maya like blunt instruments, truth and rumor blending, swirling. "You know them?" she asked Sarah. "They've been reported before. Threatening black students, shouting slurs at Muslim girls in hijabs. The school always investigated. Nothing ever came of it." Connor let out a low groan. Tyler clutched his arm, moaning, "My shoulder. I can't feel my shoulder." No one moved to help them. Sarah approached slowly. "You all right?" "I don't know," Maya admitted. "I didn't think. I just reacted." "You survived. That's not reaction. That's resilience." Maya's eyes flicked to Brad, his nose flattened, blood painting his shirt like a badge of disgrace. "They're gonna say I went too far," she said. "They're going to spin it. Turn it into something it wasn't." Sarah looked her straight in the eye. "Maybe, but there's a difference now." "What difference?" Sarah gestured to the circle of phones, of strangers standing not in judgment but in truth. "You have witnesses. And this time, we're not letting it go quiet." Maya's chest ached, not from the fight, but from the weight that followed it. The system, the media, the slow grind of racism that didn't bleed like fists, but bruised all the same. One man stepped forward. "I've got it all on video, from the alley, start to finish." "I've got backup angles," a woman said. They were laughing, recording her like it was a game. Maya looked around, suddenly aware she wasn't alone in this moment. For once, eyes didn't look through her, but at her. But even so, fear twisted in her stomach. "They'll have lawyers," she whispered. "They'll come after me." Sarah nodded. "Probably, but they won't be the only ones with a voice this time." An ambulance pulled into view. Officers spilled out behind it. As they approached, Maya turned to Sarah one last time. "Will you stay?" Sarah smiled softly, then squared her shoulders. "Right beside you." Flashing lights painted Maya's face in blue and red, and somewhere behind the crowd, a camera shutter snapped. The image would go viral. But the truth, raw, complicated, defiant, was still being written. And Maya hadn't even begun to speak. The strobing red and blue lights painted the alley in harsh, alternating colors as two patrol cars screeched to a halt. Maya stood over the three groaning figures, her chest heaving, knuckles split and bleeding. The adrenaline that had carried her through the fight now left her trembling, vulnerable in the sudden glare of authority. "Hands where I can see them. Get on the ground now." Officer Martinez burst from the first car, his service weapon drawn and trained on Maya with the reflexive certainty of someone who had been taught to see threat before truth. At 26, he carried the eager aggression of a rookie still trying to prove himself, his training manual responses overriding the evidence scattered before him. Maya's hands shot skyward, muscle memory from a childhood spent watching her neighbors navigate police encounters. The concrete bit into her knees as she dropped, the same pavement where moments before she had reclaimed her dignity now forcing her into submission. "Jesus Christ, Martinez." Sergeant Williams emerged from the second car, his weathered face taking in the scene with the practiced eye of someone who had spent 15 years reading between the lines of police reports. At 43, the black veteran had seen enough to recognize the familiar choreography of injustice. "Look at the scene before you draw your weapon." Dr. Chun stepped forward, her phone held high like a shield. "Officers, this woman was attacked. We have it all on video. She was defending herself." "Ma'am, step back and let us handle this," Martinez barked, his gun still trained on Maya despite the growing chorus of witness voices. Williams surveyed the carnage with calculating eyes. Brad lay unconscious, blood pooling beneath his shattered nose. Connor sat against the brick wall, cradling his ribs and whimpering. Tyler rocked back and forth, his shoulder hanging at an unnatural angle. Three privileged college boys, reduced to broken toys by a woman half their size. What happened here? Williams asked Dr. Chun, his tone measured and professional. Those three attacked her, called her racial slurs, choked her. She fought back. Dr. Chen's voice carried the authority of someone accustomed to being heard, her academic credentials a shield that Maya had never possessed. The paramedics arrived, immediately rushing to tend to the three attackers while Maya remained on her knees, hands still raised. The optics were damning. A black woman surrounded by broken white bodies. Guilt assumed before innocence could even be considered. She's the victim here, Dr. Chun insisted, showing her phone screen to Williams. Look at the footage. They followed her, cornered her, put their hands on her first. Williams studied the video, his expression unreadable. 22 years on the force had taught him that truth was often the first casualty in situations like this. He had seen too many reports where the narrative was shaped by assumptions rather than evidence, where skin color determined guilt before facts could intervene. Maya, Dr. Chun whispered urgently, don't say anything until we get you a lawyer. I'm calling someone now. Maya nodded silently, understanding that even her voice could be weaponized against her in this moment. The system that should have protected her was already positioning itself to prosecute her instead. The hospital lights buzzed softly above Brad's still body. Oxygen hissed through tubes. A monitor beeped, steady but faint. But outside that room, the world was anything but quiet. It began with a single tweet. A clip, 32 seconds long, showing Brad's hands on Maya's throat, Connor laughing behind the lens, Tyler egging him on. Then the footage from a liquor store camera surfaced. Grainy but clear. The boys stalking her, cornering her, assaulting her. Within hours, the video exploded. Hashtag Justice for Maya trended globally. Maya watched it all unfold on her cracked phone in the living room of her grandmother's modest house. The walls were lined with black and white photos of marches, protests, and family portraits that time hadn't managed to fade. The air smelled faintly of eucalyptus and fried okra. Rosa Johnson sat across from her, legs crossed neatly, a woman in her 70s with a spine like a soldier's and eyes that had seen too much. You didn't ask for this fight, Rosa said, voice low. But sometimes, baby, the fight finds you. Maya stared at the screen, her reflection distorted in the glass. They're calling me brave, but I didn't do anything heroic. I fought back because I didn't want to die. Rosa's face softened. That's exactly why it was heroic. Maya didn't respond. Her eyes dropped to the folder on the table. A legal document. A settlement offer. 6 figures. No trial. No statements. No press. Just silence. They want me quiet, Maya said. Their parents, they hired lawyers who smile like they're doing me a favor. They're calling it a misunderstanding. Rosa reached forward, laying her hand on Maya's. Her fingers were worn from years of organizing, marching, writing letters no one answered. Your grandfather spent 6 nights in jail for sitting at a whites-only lunch counter. I watched him bleed for dignity. They tried to silence him too with hush money and threats. But he said something I'll never forget. Maya met her eyes. He said, "The truth is louder than fear." Maya's throat tightened. She remembered being 7, her fists too small for the gloves, Rosa adjusting them while humming Nina Simone under her breath. She remembered Rosa in the crowd at her first amateur win. Tears in her eyes, but no words spoken. Do you think I can do this? Maya whispered. I know you can. The question is, are you ready to carry the weight? Outside, reporters gathered like vultures. Headlines were already shaping narratives. Some conservative outlets asked why Maya hadn't simply walked away. One columnist called it a case of reverse aggression. Microaggressions were slathered in politeness, words like overreaction, self-defense ambiguity, and shared culpability. Maya stood and walked to the window. You know what I really wanted? She said. Before all this, Rosa waited. I wanted to compete at the nationals, finish my degree, make the Olympic team, be more than this story. You still can, Rosa said. But first you have to own the story, not let it own you. The doorbell rang. A lawyer from the legal aid clinic, community organizer, a local black journalist. One by one, they were arriving. Maya turned back to Rosa. "I'm not signing the settlement." Rosa exhaled slowly, half worry, half pride. "You sure?" "I'd rather lose everything than let them rewrite what happened to me." Rosa nodded, her eyes glassy. "Then let's begin." As Maya opened the door, cameras flashed in the distance. She stepped outside, not as a victim, not as a fighter, but as a woman who decided her truth would no longer hide in the dark. And in the crowd, someone watched her from a parked car, phone in hand, recording quietly, waiting. The courthouse steps stretched before Maya like a battlefield, each concrete tier representing another level of scrutiny she would have to endure. Camera crews clustered at the bottom, their lenses hungry for the story that had ignited social media and divided a community. 3 weeks had passed since the attack, 3 weeks of sleepless nights and death threats, mixed with messages of support from strangers who saw themselves in her struggle. Maya had made her choice the morning after her attackers' families hired the most expensive legal team money could buy. While their lawyers spun narratives of mutual combat and excessive force, she had walked into the district attorney's office and pressed charges. The decision had cost her. Her part-time job at the campus bookstore disappeared overnight. Her social media flooded with vitriol from anonymous accounts calling her everything from violent thug to worse. But it had also revealed something she hadn't expected. An army of supporters who had been waiting for someone brave enough to stand up. Rosa Johnson stood to Maya's left, her weathered hands steady despite her 78 years. The civil rights veteran had marched with Dr. King, had faced down police dogs and fire hoses, and now watched her granddaughter prepare to face a different kind of battle. Dr. Chun flanked Maya's right side, her presence a bridge between the academic world that had initially rejected Maya's truth and the growing coalition demanding justice. 3 weeks ago, I was just trying to get home from work, Maya began, her voice carrying across the crowd of reporters and supporters. The microphones captured every word, broadcasting her truth to a world that had tried to silence her. "I wasn't looking for a fight. I was just existing while black in a space where some people believe I don't belong." The words came easier now than they had in the beginning. The first interview had been torture. Every question a trap, every answer scrutinized for signs of aggression or victimhood. But Maya had learned to navigate the narrow path between being seen as too angry or not angry enough, too strong or not strong enough. "For 22 years, I've been taught to make myself smaller, to avoid confrontation, to accept disrespect as the price of existing in certain spaces." Her voice grew stronger with each sentence, the tremor of fear replaced by the steady rhythm of conviction. "That night, when those men put their hands on me, when they tried to choke the life out of me, I made a choice. I chose to fight back." The crowd erupted in applause, but Maya's eyes found the counter-protesters at the edge of the gathering. Young men in polo shirts holding signs that read, "Self-defense or assault." Their presence reminded her that this victory was temporary, that the work of changing hearts and minds would continue long after the cameras stopped rolling. "I'm not here to be anyone's symbol," Maya continued, her grandmother's hand finding hers. "I'm here to say that we all have the right to defend ourselves, to exist without fear, to walk home safely regardless of the color of our skin." The transformation was complete, from invisible to undeniable. The courtroom fell silent as Maya approached the witness stand, her footsteps echoing in the marble-walled chamber that had seen decades of justice sought and sometimes denied. 6 months had passed since that October night, 6 months of legal maneuvering and media scrutiny that had transformed a simple case of self-defense into a referendum on race, privilege, and power in America. The gallery was packed beyond capacity, with overflow crowds watching on screens in adjacent rooms, a testament to how deeply this case had penetrated the national consciousness. Outside, protesters and supporters lined the courthouse steps in a sea of signs and solidarity. Some carried photos of Maya, others held banners reading "Justice for All" and "Self-defense is not a crime." Counter-protesters clustered at the far end, their messages a stark reminder that not everyone believed in Maya's right to defend herself. The media circus had grown exponentially since the case began, with cable news networks providing gavel-to-gavel coverage and social media exploding with hashtags that had become rallying cries for both sides. Judge Patricia Hernandez, a Latina woman who had fought her own battles to reach the bench, watched with careful attention as Maya placed her hand on the Bible. At 52, Hernandez had presided over countless cases, but few had carried the weight of this moment, where the verdict would reverberate far beyond the courtroom walls. The jury, 7 women and 5 men of diverse backgrounds, leaned forward, their faces reflecting the weight of the decision they would soon make. Behind the defense table, Brad Whitfield sat in an expensive suit that couldn't hide the permanent scar across his nose, while his parents clutched each other in the front row, their world of privilege cracking under the weight of accountability. The morning light streamed through tall windows, casting long shadows across the polished wood floors where justice would either triumph or fail once again. Camera crews lined the hallway outside, their equipment a testament to how one woman's courage had captured a nation's attention. The air itself seemed charged with anticipation, as if the very atoms understood the historical significance of what was about to unfold. Ms. Johnson, Prosecutor Amanda Torres began, her voice steady and respectful. Please tell the court what happened on the night of October 15th. Maya's testimony unfolded like a masterclass in dignity under fire. She spoke not just of the physical attack, but of the accumulated weight of a lifetime spent navigating spaces where her humanity was questioned. Her voice carried the quiet strength of someone who had found power in truth, each word carefully chosen to paint a picture that extended far beyond one violent encounter. The courtroom hung on every syllable, understanding that they were witnessing something profound, a woman reclaiming her narrative from those who had tried to silence her. I was walking home from my job at Murphy's Diner, Maya began, her eyes finding each juror in turn. I work there because I have to pay for school myself. My grandmother raised me after my parents died, and she taught me that education was the one thing nobody could take away from you. But she was wrong about that. They can try to take it away piece by piece with every stare, every whispered comment, every assumption about who you are based on what you look like. The courtroom was transfixed as Maya described the daily microaggressions that had shaped her existence. The suspicious stares in stores where she was followed by security guards, the assumptions about her intelligence when she spoke up in class, the way people crossed streets when they saw her coming, the constant code switching required to navigate predominantly white spaces. Her testimony painted a picture of psychological warfare waged through 1,000 small cuts, each incident seemingly minor but collectively devastating. Every day, I made myself smaller, Maya continued, her voice growing stronger with each revelation. I learned to speak differently in certain places, to dress a certain way, to avoid eye contact that might be seen as threatening. I learned that my very existence was political, that my presence in certain spaces was seen as an intrusion rather than a right. I learned to apologize for taking up space, for breathing the same air as people who looked at me and saw everything they'd been taught to fear or despise. The weight of her words settled over the courtroom like a heavy blanket, forcing everyone present to confront uncomfortable truths about the society they had helped create or allowed to persist. Several jurors wiped away tears, while others sat in stunned silence, perhaps recognizing their own complicity in the system Maya described. They didn't see me as a person that night, Maya said, her voice never wavering despite the tears glistening in her eyes. They saw a target, someone they could hurt without consequences because they believed the system would protect them, not me. They were almost right. For 22 years, the system had taught me that my safety was less important than their comfort, that my life was worth less than their entertainment. Defense attorney Richard Blackstone, a silver-haired veteran of high-profile cases who had built his reputation defending the wealthy and connected, attempted to dismantle her credibility with surgical precision. His strategy was as predictable as it was insidious: paint the victim as the aggressor, the defender as the attacker. He had used this playbook countless times before, relying on implicit biases and stereotypes to create reasonable doubt where none should exist. Isn't it true, Ms. Johnson, that you're a skilled boxer who could have simply walked away? Blackstone's tone carried the condescension of someone who had never had to walk away from anything in his life, whose privilege had always provided him with options that others could only dream of. Maya's response cut through his strategy like a blade through silk. Walking away is a luxury I've never had, Mr. Blackstone. When you're black in America, there's nowhere to walk away to. The hatred follows you. It's in the job applications that get ignored, the apartments that suddenly become unavailable, the assumptions that you don't belong in certain neighborhoods or schools or spaces. That night, I finally stopped running. But surely you could have used less force. How much force is appropriate when someone is choking you? Maya's interruption was sharp, her composure cracking just enough to reveal the fire beneath. How gently should I have asked them to stop calling me racial slurs? What's the proper etiquette for being attacked because of the color of your skin? Should I have politely requested that they remove their hands from my throat? The gallery erupted in murmurs of support, quickly silenced by Judge Hernandez's gavel. But the damage to Blackstone's narrative was done. Maya had refused to be painted as anything other than what she was, a victim who had found the strength to fight back. Mr. Blackstone, Maya continued, her voice steady but fierce, you're asking me to justify my right to breathe, my right to exist, my right to defend myself when 3 men decided my life was worth less than their entertainment. I won't do that. I refuse to apologize for surviving. The cross-examination continued for hours, with Blackstone attempting every angle he could think of to undermine Maya's credibility. He questioned her character, her background, her motivations. He tried to paint her as someone looking for fame or money, someone who had escalated the situation unnecessarily. But Maya met each attack with grace and truth, her responses revealing not just her own strength, but the bankruptcy of a system that would blame a victim for fighting back. The evidence was overwhelming, a mountain of proof that even Blackstone's considerable skills couldn't erode. Security footage from 3 different businesses showed the attackers following Maya for blocks, their body language predatory and purposeful. The videos were damning. 3 privileged young men stalking a woman who was simply trying to get home safely. Cell phone videos captured their racial slurs and the moment Brad's hands closed around her throat. The audio so clear that every hateful word rang through the courtroom like a bell of condemnation. Medical reports documented her injuries alongside theirs, painting a clear picture of self-defense rather than aggression. Maya's injuries were consistent with being choked and thrown against a wall. Defensive wounds on her arms, bruising around her throat, scrapes on her back from the brick wall. Her attackers' injuries, while more severe, were all frontal, the result of facing an opponent rather than attacking a victim. Dr. Chun had become an unexpected star witness, her academic credentials lending weight to her testimony about the systematic harassment minorities faced in the university district. She spoke with the passion of someone who had found her calling, describing incident after incident that had been dismissed or ignored by authorities. Her transformation from passive observer to active advocate had been remarkable to witness. This wasn't an isolated event, Dr. Chun testified, her voice carrying the authority of research and lived experience. It was the inevitable result of a culture that tolerates hatred as long as it's dressed in polo shirts and speaks with the right accent. I've documented 17 similar incidents in the past 2 years alone, all involving minority students or workers being harassed in this same area. The pattern is clear. These young men believed they could act with impunity because they always had before. Her transformation from bystander to advocate had inspired other faculty members to speak out about incidents they had previously ignored, creating a cascade of testimony that revealed the depth of the problem at Whitmore University. Professor Martinez spoke of students too afraid to report harassment, their academic performance suffering as they tried to navigate hostile environments. Dr. Williams described the subtle ways minority faculty were marginalized, their contributions minimized and their expertise questioned. The picture that emerged was of an institution that had allowed hatred to flourish in the shadows while maintaining a facade of diversity and inclusion. The prosecution's case was methodical and devastating. They called witness after witness who testified to the pattern of harassment in the university district. They presented evidence of previous complaints against the 3 defendants that had been dismissed or covered up. They showed how privilege had protected these young men from consequences, enabling their behavior to escalate until it reached the level of violence. When the jury returned after 3 hours of deliberation, their verdict rang through the courtroom like a bell of justice finally allowed to toll. The foreman, a middle-aged black man who worked as an engineer, stood with quiet dignity as he read the words that would change everything. On the charge of assault in the first degree, we find the defendant Bradley Whitfield guilty. On the charge of hate crime enhancement, we find the defendant guilty. The words continued for each defendant, each guilty verdict landing like a hammer blow against the edifice of privilege that had protected them their entire lives. The courtroom erupted in cheers and tears, months of tension finally released in a moment of pure catharsis. Maya sat perfectly still, tears streaming down her face, as the reality of the moment washed over her. Justice, so long denied to people who looked like her, had finally arrived. Brad Whitfield received 5 years in state prison, his privileged life shattered by the consequences he had never believed would touch him. As the sentence was read, his mother collapsed in sobs while his father sat in stunned silence, perhaps finally understanding that money and connections couldn't buy their way out of this reckoning. Connor Hayes was sentenced to 4 years, while Tyler Morrison received 3.5. Their family's wealth and connections had finally met a force they couldn't buy or influence. The truth, captured on video and witnessed by a community that refused to look away. The ripple effects extended far beyond the courtroom walls like stones thrown into still water. Whitmore University, facing federal investigation and the threat of losing federal funding, implemented comprehensive hate crime policies and mandatory bias training for all students and faculty. The changes weren't cosmetic. They included real consequences, real accountability, and real support for victims. The university established a $10 million fund for diversity initiatives and hired a team of investigators specifically trained to handle bias incidents. Dr. Chun accepted a position as the new director of campus safety and inclusion, her office becoming a beacon for students who had previously suffered in silence. Her first initiative was a 24-hour hotline staffed by trained counselors, followed by a campus escort service and mandatory education programs that addressed both overt racism and unconscious bias. The programs were comprehensive, addressing everything from microaggressions in the classroom to hate crimes in the community. "We're not just changing policies," Dr. Chun announced at her first press conference, standing before a room packed with reporters and activists. "We're changing culture. We're saying that hatred has no home here, that every student deserves to feel safe and valued. We're acknowledging that diversity without inclusion is meaningless, that representation without protection is hollow." Sergeant Williams launched the Community Bridge program, pairing police officers with local residents to build trust and understanding through shared meals, community service, and honest conversations about the history of policing in minority communities. His own journey from skeptical cop to advocate had shown him that change was possible, one relationship at a time. The program started small but grew rapidly as both officers and community members discovered the power of genuine dialogue. "I spent 15 years seeing the symptoms," Williams explained to a room full of officers and community leaders, his voice carrying the weight of hard-earned wisdom. "Now I want to address the disease. We can't arrest our way out of racism, but we can build our way out of it. One relationship, one conversation, one act of understanding at a time. Every officer in this room has the power to either perpetuate the cycle of mistrust or break it. The choice is ours." Maya stood on the courthouse steps once more, but this time the cameras captured triumph rather than trauma. The full scholarship to complete her degree at State University represented more than financial freedom. It was validation that her voice mattered, that her story had power to create change. The offer from Golden Gloves Boxing Academy sat in her backpack, a professional contract that would allow her to channel her strength into something beautiful rather than merely necessary. But perhaps the most meaningful change was internal. The girl who had once tried to make herself invisible now stood tall, unafraid to take up space in a world that had tried to diminish her. As she looked out at the crowd of supporters, Maya understood that her fight had become something larger than personal justice. It had become a catalyst for the kind of change that happens when individual courage meets collective action. "This isn't the end," Maya said into the microphones thrust toward her, her voice carrying across the crowd and into living rooms across the nation. "This is just the beginning. Every person who has ever been told they don't belong, every person who has ever been made to feel less than human because of who they are, this victory belongs to you too. We have the right to exist, to defend ourselves, to take up space in this world. And we will never stop fighting for that right." The fight against racism would continue long after the cameras stopped rolling, but Maya Johnson had proven that individual courage could indeed spark systemic change, one punch at a time.